Today marks the death of Lord Norman Tebbit, who died peacefully at his home in Bury St Edmunds at the age of 94. The news has just come out. One of Margaret Thatcher's most steadfast allies. He was a figure of formidable intellect, personal courage, unflinching conviction. He was many things: working class boy turned pilot, minister, party chairman, survivor of one of the IRA's most notorious attacks in Brighton. Above all, he was a man who shaped British politics in an age of conflict and change. He was born in 1931 in Ponders End in Middlesex. In the middle of the Great Depression, he attended a state grammar school, began work at the Financial Times, where he encountered the closed-shop unionism he would later try to dismantle. After national service in the RAF, he flew Meteor and Vampire jets. His experience as an airline pilot with the BOAC, navigating demanding conditions, informed his no-nonsense approach to politics. He was elected an MP for Epping in 1970, and then for Chingford in 1974. He entered Parliament as a Thatcherite before Thatcherism existed in name, a voice for hard work, meritocracy, resistance to union, militancy, and he gained a reputation as a ferocious parliamentary performer, accusing Michael Foot of fostering Marxist collectivist totalitarianism and warning of appeasement in the face of union power, and telling people to get on their bike and find a job. When the Conservatives won in 1979, Tebbit rose swiftly. As Employment Secretary from 1981, he introduced the 1982 Employment Act, curbing the closed shop, strengthening legal remedies against unlawful strikes, and he's perhaps best remembered for his 1981 party conference remark in response to riots over unemployment. "I grew up in the 1930s with an unemployed father. He didn't riot. He got on his bike and looked for work." It was a message of personal responsibility that delighted Thatcherites and infuriated the left. As Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, he oversaw the privatisation of British Telecom, advancing the government's market reforms. But Tebbit wasn't merely a Thatcher enforcer. He also warned her about the public's perception of her combative virtues turned into vices, a counsel she often ignored. In October 1984, Tebbit became one of the highest profile victims of the IRA's Brighton bombing. The attack, designed to kill Thatcher and her cabinet, destroyed the Grand Hotel in the early hours of the final day of the Conservative Party conference. Tebbit and his wife Margaret were asleep on the second floor when the bomb went off. The blast hurled their bed into the foyer below. Trapped under rubble for hours, they spoke and held hands in the dark until rescuers freed them. Tebbit emerged with broken bones. Margaret was left permanently paralysed. It was a searing trauma, yet Tebbit returned to politics. He cared for his wife with unwavering devotion until her death in 2020. His stoicism in the face of terrorism became a defining element of public image. And Tebbit became the chairman of the Conservative Party in 1985. He was the strategist behind Thatcher's 1987 landslide, mastering the use of modern advertising and campaigning. And despite fierce arguments with colleagues over tactics, he delivered results. Yet he left the cabinet in 1987 to care for Margaret, a decision that underscored the family loyalty that ran beneath his combative public persona. Even from the backbenches, he remained a powerful voice, though, launching the controversial Tebbit test in 1990, questioning whether immigrants supported England or their ancestral countries in cricket, a phrase that became shorthand for his views on integration and British identity. Elevated to the Lords in 1992, Tebbit remained one of the party's most forceful voices. He became a patron of Euroscepticism long before it was mainstream, supporting campaigns for Britain to leave the European Union and even backing John Redwood's challenge to John Major. He wrote prolifically, unafraid to provoke or offend, and critics saw inflexibility, admirers saw clarity of purpose. Tebbit was often caricatured the semi-house-trained polecat, a phrase Michael Foot used as an insult and Tebbit wore as a badge of honour. On Spitting Image, he appeared as a leather-clad bruiser. He laughed along. But behind the bravado lay genuine conviction and considerable humour. He never affected patrician airs, keeping his accent and his working-class directness to the end. Lord Michael Dobbs, the former Chief of Staff, called him a man of great humour and tremendous courage. Lord Moore, Thatcher's biographer, called him the embodiment of the self-made man, unapologetic about his roots. Lord Tebbit's death marks the end of an era. He was one of Thatcherism's chief architects, a scourge of union power, an advocate of personal responsibility, and a defender of a Britain he believed was slipping from its moorings. Yet he was also a man who suffered greatly for his politics, his wife's paralysis, a lifelong testimony to the price paid in the Troubles, and who showed loyalty not only to his party but to his family in the most demanding circumstances. Whether admired or criticised, Lord Tebbit, Norman Tebbit, cannot be forgotten. He was a man who, in the words of Nadim Zahawi, represented conservative ideals and whose life story was inseparable from the tumult of modern British history.